So let's recap phase 1 of the MCU so far. We started with a high tier movie, then put out 2 straight low tier movies, and then a mid tier movie. So, naturally we're going to follow up with another mid tier movie, right? Correct! And this mid-tier movie is Captain America, the First Avenger. While the previous movies dealt with Greek gods, geniuses, and scientists, this movie deals with just an ordinary kid from Brooklyn. Well, ordinary for a bit at least, until he turns into a genetically enhanced super soldier off to save the world. And unlike the rest of the MCU movies so far, this movie actually takes place way in the past, actually in the 1940s during World War II. We get to learn the Marvel history of World War II, basically a subdivision of Nazis called Hydra is looking to take over the world with some kind of super weapon called the Tesseract, which they discovered. And of course, despite some trials and tribulations, it's up to our hero, Captain America, to go and stop them. And this movie, I gotta say, was very well executed, mainly in part due to Chris Evans as the title character. Evans had a weird history with Marvel before this. He played Johnny Flame in the kinda not so good Fantastic Four series, and he really was in need of a career reboot. And while yes, this role was a risk for Evans, because if it bombed, well, his career might be screwed. I mean, if you fail 2 straight Marvel characters, well, then you might be in trouble there, bud. Luckily, this did not bomb, and it turned into a very solid mid-tier MCU movie. Some people would argue that this is a top-tier movie. I would personally disagree, just because I don't feel like it brought as much to the table as Iron Man did, and I feel like it was surpassed by both its forthcoming sequels. And because of its sequels, I feel like this movie gets overlooked a little bit, but it really doesn't deserve that, as it's an incredibly good origin story. And being as I see this movie as mid-tier, obviously I think it's better than Iron Man 2 and the Incredible Hulk, and not as good as Iron Man, but was it better than Thor? Well, the only way to find out is to take a look at it, and that's exactly what we're going to do, as we take a look back at Captain America, the First Avenger. So this movie kicks off in present day, with scientists uncovering some kind of old ship that's been trapped in ice. They discover there's more here than meets the eye though, as there's an old shield frozen in the ice. But we'll learn more about that later, as it's time to take you to Norway, all the way back in 1942. A Norway scientist, presumably, has his church broken into by Nazis and their commander Johann Schmidt, who is looking for an important artifact. Schmidt locates the artifact, which is revealed to be the mysterious Tesseract, which he takes before killing the man. Back in New York, we are introduced to some young, scrawny kid by the name of Steve Rogers. He is desperate to join the US Army and fight in World War II, but is rejected due to a lot of health problems. Dejected, Rogers decides to go see a movie. The pre-movie war ad, though, keeps getting interrupted by some asshole, who Rogers confronts. The asshole then takes Rogers outside and starts kicking his ass. Luckily, Steve's friend, Bucky Barnes, is here to save the day. Bucky reveals to Steve that he's shipping out to war tomorrow, and as a last hurrah between the two friends, decides to take him to some kind of festival showcasing technologies of the future. Bucky sets Steve up with a date, who unfortunately doesn't seem to have any interest in him. They then go watch a presentation by Tony Stark's father, Howard, who is demonstrating the car of the future. It doesn't really work that well, but you know, it's the future. Steve finds a recruitment station and once again decides to enlist. Bucky tries to talk him out of it, but Steve is determined, and they say their goodbyes to each other. As he attempts to enlist again, Steve catches the eye of a German doctor by the name of Abraham Erskine. The doctor gives Steve a chance to be part of a special military branch looking for the newest super soldier. We then go to the Hydra base for the first time, where Schmidt is attempting to harness the power of the Tesseract along with Dr. Zola. Schmidt and Zola are able to unlock the Tesseract's true potential and realize that it can power all their world-destroying weapons. Meanwhile, Steve arrives at basic training, where him and the other candidates are overseen by Colonel Phillips and British agent Peggy Carter. Steve does not impress them initially, as he underperforms in a lot of tasks because, well, he's small. However, the doctor sticks up for him, and he catches the eye of both the Colonel and Carter after he displays selfless bravery by falling on a fake grenade. Steve is then officially picked to be the next super soldier, but he has some questions as to why the doctor wanted him. The doctor then tells Steve the tale of the original super soldier, a man by the name of Johann Schmidt. And while Schmidt did get the superhuman abilities, something went wrong in a procedure that apparently scarred him for life. The doctor is confident that this will not happen to Steve though, as since then, the serum has been perfected, and he believes the reason that Schmidt became worse is because he was a bad man, and the serum makes bad man worse, but good man better. And that's what makes Steve the perfect candidate for the serum, is that he is a good man with a pure heart. Speaking of Johann though, he has learned that the Doctor is alive and he has sent an assassin to America to kill him. The big day is here though. Steve goes with Peggy to a secret underground base where he is to be injected with the super soldier serum. They begin the procedure and Steve screams in pain. They attempt to stop it, but Steve tells them to keep going as he is strong enough to take it. And turns out he is, not just in heart, but now he's super strong. But just as they're celebrating the success, the assassin is here. He blows up part of the lab and shoots Dr. Erskine through the chest. Dr. Erskine reminds Steve to maintain a good heart before passing away, which prompts Steve to go after the assassin. After saving Peggy from nearly dying at the assassin's hand, Steve decides to give his new powers a test drive. He chases the assassin on foot before climbing onto his car, which he eventually crashes. The assassin kidnaps a little boy who he then yeets into the water. Luckily he can swim though. Looks like he got away though as he escaped on a submarine. But wait, you thought you were watching Captain America? Nah, bitch, this is Aquaman. Steve captures him, but the assassin bites a cyanide pill, which kills him pretty quickly. Meanwhile, at the Legion of Doom, Schmidt is confronted by some Nazi officers who want to know the extent of the experiments he's working on. It's then revealed that Schmidt is going to go against Hitler, and he solidifies this by killing all 3 of the officers. And by killing, I mean fucking evaporating them. Our heroes meanwhile try to recover from the loss of the Doctor, but the Colonel is none too pleased. Rather than sending Rogers off to war, he's gonna send him to a scientific lab to be studied. However, a US senator approaches Rogers with a much different idea. Rogers is given a colorful costume and tours the country as Captain America in an attempt to sell war bonds. Captain America becomes incredibly popular, starring in his own movies and getting his own comic book. It seems he's only popular with little kids and the general public though. He goes to perform in front of the soldiers who handily reject him and throw shit at him. After the show, Rogers reunites with Peggy, from who he learns that Bucky's division is MIA. Rogers finds the colonel who confirms to him that Bucky was not one of the soldiers who returned. Refusing to accept this, Steve decides to go find Bucky on his own. Agent Carter, on the other hand, though, has a different idea. She, with the help of Howard Stark, decide to fly Rogers right into enemy lines to go and try to get Bucky and the other soldiers out. Captain America drops out of the plane, breaks into the base, beats up a few Nazis, and rescues some soldiers. Steve goes deeper into the base to go find Bucky, while telling the freed soldiers to give Hydra hell. And that's quite literally what they do, as they start kicking some serious ass. Schmidt catches wind of this though and recognizes Captain America on the security cam and begins to activate the self-destruct sequence. Rogers goes deeper into the base and is able to locate Bucky, who looks like he was just about to be operated on. Rogers and Barnes confront Schmidt and Zola, and the 2 super soldiers duke it out a little bit. They're separated by the bridge though, and Schmidt takes off his face mask and reveals to Rogers why they call him the Red Skull. Zola and the Red Skull both escape, while Barnes and Rogers attempt to do the same thing. As the whole base explodes, Bucky walks precariously across a platform, which gives way just as he makes it across. Steve then attempts the mightiest of all yeet jumps, but did he survive? Well, actually, apparently not. Haha, just kidding, he's fine, and he brought the whole gang with him. Captain America's been put in charge of taking out Hydra. He needs a team though, so he recruits Bucky as well as a bunch of the other dudes who he saved. While waiting to talk to Howard Stark, however, Steve is seduced by some blonde temptress. Peggy sees this though and gets just a little bit really fucking jealous. Rogers then meets with Stark to go over some designs for a new shield. Steve's eye is caught though by a prototype shield which is revealed to be made of vibranium, but just how tough is vibranium? Well, Peggy demonstrates it by shooting at him multiple times. Captain America also gets a new costume, and now it's time for a killer montage of Captain America and friends killing some Nazis. This, of course, leaves the Red Skull just a little bit pissed off. We are now in the year 1945, and Steve and friends have found a train which contains Dr. Zola on it. Steve and Bucky infiltrate the train and are quickly jumped by a bunch of Nazi soldiers. They fight them off, but one of the Nazi soldiers blows part of the train away, knocking Bucky to the outside. Steve reaches out to save him, but Bucky can't hold on long enough and he plummets, presumably, to his death. On the bright side though, they are able to capture Dr. Zola. Zola is interrogated by the Colonel and reveals to him that Schmidt isn't just trying to destroy America, he's trying to destroy everywhere. Steve is distraught over Bucky's death, but is re-energized when it turns out Zola coughed up the location of the final Hydra base. But how the hell are they gonna get in? Just burst through the front door? Well, actually yeah, that's literally exactly what they're gonna do. It doesn't really work out that well though, as the captain is quickly captured and taken to the Red Skull, who isn't very happy to see him. Luckily, the captain was just serving as a distraction though, as the entire US Army is here to back him up. The Red Skull attempts to escape on a plane, but after a good luck kiss from Peggy, Captain America is able to successfully follow him. On the plane, Rogers discovers a few bomber jets, 2 of which are marked for Chicago and New York. Rogers destroys the Chicago plane, but the New York one's getting away. Luckily, Rogers is able to commandeer that plane though and drive it right back into the big plane. Captain America goes to the main hangar and confronts the Red Skull, who attempts to kill him with his Tesseract weapon. However, Captain America uses his shield to knock the Red Skull back into the Tesseract holder, which knocks the device loose. The Red Skull picks up the Tesseract with his bare hands, which proves to not be a very good idea, and open up some kind of wormhole to space, which sucks the Red Skull in. With the Red Skull gone, Captain America takes control of the plane, but realizes there's no safe way to land it with all the weapons on board. He realizes that he has no choice, and he has to crash the plane into the Arctic. Roger says his goodbye to Peggy over the intercom, and crashes the plane, presumably killing him. On the plus side, World War II is over though, so we can celebrate that. Howard Stark goes out to look for Rogers, and while he is able to locate the Tesseract, he is not able to locate Rogers' body. Looks like somebody located him though, as Rogers wakes up in a hospital room. He knows something's up though, because the baseball game playing on the radio just so happens to be a game he attended in 1941, because of course it is. What are the odds of that? Sensing danger, Rogers breaks for the facility and out into the streets of modern-day New York. He's surrounded by agents and confronted by Nick Fury. Fury then informs Rogers that he has been asleep for nearly 70 years. Rogers is distraught by this, but more distraught at the fact that he missed his date with Peggy. And finally, in a post-credit scene, Rogers is getting some work in with a punching bag. He is then once again approached by Fury, who has a mission which may determine the future of the world. So I've pretty much already established that I think this is one of the top 3 movies so far, but was it top 2? Well, let's pull up the big board and find out. Now, while I think Thor did have a stronger villain than this movie, I think this movie presented a more overall strong plot. While I do think there were certain elements of Thor who were weak, like the human characters, I don't think there was really a weak character in this movie, or a really weak piece of the plot at all. I think this was an overall solid film, which is why I am going to put this second. The new rankings are as followed: Iron Man number 1, Captain America First Avenger number 2, Thor number 3, Iron Man 2 number 4, and The Incredible Hulk number 5. Now, I've given this movie a lot of positives, but there is a criticism I have of this. However, to be honest, I don't even think the criticism is necessarily even the movie's fault. It's more of just that World War II has been done to death in terms of media. There's been so many video games and programs and movies all about World War II, and this just kind of gets meshed into there. And while yes, it does put an interesting spin on it, I can see why people would just push this off as, oh well, it's just another freaking World War II movie. And maybe that's why the next 2 movies were received even better, because they had nothing to do with World War II at all, just the development of Captain America as a person and a character. But I mean, it's not like they could completely change the comic book origins, so I think they did a pretty good job with what they had to use. And while the Red Skull wasn't necessarily a weak villain, I don't know, he just seemed a little underwhelming when he had to follow Loki. He just didn't have the same charisma, but then again, he was trying to portray a Nazi, so fair enough. And again, while I don't think this movie is top tier, and while I do think both of its sequels are better, I think it is grossly underappreciated. Its sequels are likely the reason why it gets cast aside so often, and it really doesn't deserve that. To this point, it was the second best origin story they had came up with other than Iron Man. But of course, we were doing all these origin stories for a reason, to lead into the ultimate battle, the ultimate grouping of all of them called the Avengers. And when we return with our MCU look back, that, ladies and gentlemen, is what we are going to look back at next. But in conclusion, this movie deserves more respect. Sure, it's not the best origin story they ever put out, but it's a pretty damn solid movie, and should not be ignored just because both its sequels are even better. And of course, it leads into the Avengers well, as we get to immediately see how Steve Rogers is going to adapt to modern day society. And that is what we will do next time, but for now, that is going to do it for my look back at Captain America the First Avenger. I hope you guys enjoyed it. Join me back here next week for my King Kong look back at Son of Kong, but that is going to do it for me today, you guys. Thank you guys for watching, thank you to all my patrons for supporting me, and yep, I will see you guys back here next week. This video was delayed till Sunday. Next week's video should be on Saturday once again. My name is Noah Taft. This is once again my MCU look back at Captain America the First Avenger, and I will see you guys next time. Bye.